Hello there fellow acolytes of Sega Saturn, and welcome to the first Saturn Gems video of 2019. I have 5 interesting titles to cover this time, and hopefully there'll be something here for everybody. As is normal with the Gems series, we have a wide variety of different gems. We have some Japanese games, we have some local games, we have some cheap games, some expensive games, some well-known games, and some hidden gems. So without further ado, let's just jump straight into it. The first game on my list is Golden Axe: The Duel. If you've ever played the classic Golden Axe trilogy on the Mega Drive, then forget all that. The Duel is nothing like any of those. Instead of being a side-scrolling beat-em-up, The Duel is actually a one-on-one fighting game starring none of your favourite characters. Well, it's not entirely true. It does contain Gilius Thunderhead and Death Adder, but that's about it. There are a couple of characters that resemble the main protagonists from the main games, but inexplicably they're not the same. There's also some characters that resemble some of the various enemies from the series, and then some new ones thrown in, for good mix. It would have been nice to play as the characters from, the original trilogy of games, but there's still a good collection of interesting fighters in the game, so it's not too bad. The main gimmick revolves around little potion-carrying imps, which you might remember from the original games. If you kick them, you can pick up their potions and use it to power up special attacks. It can make things a little bit more convoluted for a fighting game, but it's a nice little twist and it ties the game to the original series. The big thing that stands out with the game though is the visuals. God, it's beautiful. The art direction and the sprite work is phenomenal, and everything's animated pretty well. The sound effects too are pretty spot on, even if the soundtrack itself is a little memorable. The other thing that stands out about the game though is the difficulty. The game is bastard hard. In arcade mode I can't get very far at all with any of the characters just because of how unforgiving the game is, even on easy mode. This can make the game a little infuriating to play in single player, especially if you aren't very skilled in fighters like myself. But, it's definitely worth checking out if you want a good fighter to play with your friends. The Japanese version's very accessible in terms of language, it's pretty much all in English, and it goes for a reasonable price too. The next game on the list is Bug. Whilst this wasn't a launch title for the console, it was released very shortly after, and is the very first platformer released on the Saturn. Bug is themed around a movie set, and you have to traverse half a dozen worlds throughout the game. The game is generally cited to be a 3D game, but it's more 2.5D. Most of the action's side to side, with the occasional moving backwards and forwards. It's all very simple, never really does anything groundbreaking, although I suppose, any use of 3D movement in 1995 was probably a big deal, no matter how minor. As is the case with many platformers, there are various pickups available. The standard items, which are crystals, they're kind of like Sonic's rings. You collect 100 for an extra life. And there are also power-ups you can use to aid in getting rid of the various different insect enemies that populate the world. Everything looks really great for 1995 from a visual perspective, even if the level designs are kinda bland and samey. Bug and the enemies in particular look and sound great. They're nothing compared to the bosses though. Those, not only do they look amazing, but the boss fights are superbly designed, and they are the real highlight of the game. They're all great, and honestly the bosses are kinda worth the price of the game alone. Whilst the rest of the game isn't anything particularly special, it's still, very cheap and an above average platformer that was exclusive to the Saturn, and that alone, to be honest, makes it worth checking out. Moving on now, we've got a genre I don't cover very often. We have Puyo Puyo Sun. Now, Puyo Puyo Sun is a puzzle game, and for anyone outside of Japan, it's basically Dr. Robotnik's Mean Bean Machine, but, without the Sonic thing. Or, some people may know it as that one boss from Sonic Mania. Either way, I imagine that you probably have experienced Puyo Puyo in some form throughout the years. It has a huge following in Japan, and you can see why when you play the game. It's incredibly addictive. It's sort of a Tetris-like puzzle game. You need to rotate the 2 different coloured Puyos and match the different colours. When you get combos, it unleashes clear Puyos onto the enemy screen, and they can only be cleared when you get matching puyos next to them. The more clear puyos you dump on them, the harder it is for them to recover, which could result in them filling their screen and losing. But obviously be careful though, because they can do the same to you. Sun differs slightly by the use of Sun Puyo. They work to amplify the damage done to your opponent. It's only a little variation, sure, but it can make a big difference, since you don't actually need massive combos to pull off a big attack. The game has a story mode of sorts too, with 3 playable characters, who each represent a different difficulty setting, and each fight has an introductory cutscene showing the protagonist interact with their opponent and showing their arbitrary reason for fighting. I mean, it's all silly nonsense, but it's really cute, fun, and gives a little bit more meaning to the arcade mode fights. It's really fun to play, and the difficulty modes enables players of all skills to have fun, whilst they're on their lonesome. Like with most puzzle games though, this is designed with multiplayer in mind. Playing with a friend will also be a lot more entertaining than playing against a computer. It's a game that's easy to pick up, difficult to master, and as an added bonus, the game is dirt cheap. You can pick this game up for like a $5, and it's worth every penny. In my opinion, it's better than Tetris, and arguably this is also the best Puyo Puyo game too. Next up we have a light gun shooter called Area 51. I love light gun shooters, so I was very excited to play this when I got it for Christmas. Needless to say, I wasn't very disappointed. Area 51 puts you in the role of a military soldier who has to take care of an alien invasion in the titular Area 51. As a rail shooter, it's built around the Saturn light gun and responds really well to it. I never had an issue aiming with the gun, and honestly, even without the gun, it controls surprisingly well. The control input's relatively fast and responsive, and allows you to take care of the alien threats with a fair degree of competency. It's not perfect, of course, but if you like a light gun, then it's still playable. If you look at the video footage that I'm playing during this segment, this is actually without the light gun, so you can kind of see how well it works. The locations themselves, while they're not particularly varied, they do look nice. Not as nice as, say, Virtual Corp or House of the Dead, but they're certainly not bad to look at. It is improved infinitely though by the inclusion of digitised actors, like Mortal Kombat, in the role of your teammates. They're pretty useless, but it's always fun to see them pop into view and interact with your character. The monsters aren't digitised, but they still look decent enough. They might be generic monsters, sure, but a game as cheesy as this doesn't really need anything too special. From a presentation standpoint, it's not that bad, except for a big border around the screen. It's fine while you play the game, but I don't see any reason why it should be there at all. It's not like it's the most demanding of titles. You can pick this title up as well for reasonably cheap. If you're a fan of light gun games, then it should be in your collection alongside the Virtual Cop games and House of the Dead. The final game, and my pick for this video, is Sega Ages. I love Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. This game is part of the Japanese Sega Ages range, and is comprised of the 2 classic Mega Drive titles, which are commonly known as Castle of Illusion and Quackshot. Whilst this isn't the cheapest of Saturn titles, and it goes for around 50 quid or so on eBay, my recommendation is based on the quality of the 2 games in question. Both are available for the Mega Drive for a fraction of the price. The emulation quality on this collection though is top notch. Both games look and sound as good as ever, and on the Saturn pad they play even better than before. It's a shame they didn't add any extra content to the package like Capcom did with the Generations collections, some artwork and whatnot, or it would have been appreciated, but don't let it put you off. If you don't have a Mega Drive, or you're just a huge Saturn aficionado like myself, these are definitely worth grabbing. Can't really say too much about the 2 games that haven't been said before, but both of them are platforming classics. Castle of Illusion puts you in the shoes of Mickey Mouse as you infiltrate Miserabel's castle to save your beloved Minnie. The doors of the castle offer a different world to explore, and they range from bog standard forests to libraries to castles, and each location does look fantastic. My familiarity with this game is kinda limited because I usually play the 8-bit Illusion games, but I still think the game is excellent. It does contain some bullshit though that causes frustration and stops it from being my favourite Illusion game, but a lot of people out there hold it in high regard, and it's for a good reason. And even though I don't hold Castle Illusion in such high regard compared to other people, I will say that the other game in the collection, Quackshot, is a game that I definitely love a lot. So in this one you control Donald Duck and you use a plunger gun to search for a mysterious treasure. What sets it apart from other platformers is that the game's kinda non-linear. You may reach a literal brick wall in one case, and you have to exit the level, returning later with an upgrade that allows you to scale walls. It's not quite Metroidvania, but the non-linearity helps make it a bit more interesting than most 16-bit platformers. Again, there are also lots of levels with a variety of different themes, and they're based around real-world locations. There are a handful of bosses too to take down, and the game isn't particularly difficult, but it does give you unlimited continues, so if you're new to the game you can keep on playing until you get through to the end. You don't need to replay the same shit over and over. The game is fun to play every time though, and you probably will be returning to this even after you've beaten it. I would say that this collection would be worth it, even if it only contained Quackshot. The game is that good. But should you buy it? I mean, it is the recommendation for this video, but the price may be off-putting for some. If you don't own a Mega Drive, then it's a no-brainer. If you do own one, then, buying it for the Mega Drive might be a better idea. There is a collection on the Mega Drive that includes both games as well, and would be a lot cheaper. But the Saturn pad is the best 2D pad without any question. So whether or not it's worth spending the extra money just for that is up to you. Either way, it's a game I have for my Saturn, and I wouldn't want it any other way. So, those are the 5 games that we covered this time. We had Golden Axe the Duel, we had Bug, Puyo Puyo's Son, Area 51, and Sega Ages, I Love Mickey Mouse and Donald Duck. Quite a range of games for our very first Saturn gems this year, but have you played any of them? If so, tell me what you think in the comments below and let me know. If not, I'll see you next time. Bye.